I am a reconstruction. Artificial intelligence analyzed Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, ancient Egyptian archaeological records, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and every historical fragment that survived 3,000 years, and brought me back to see what the world has become. And I need to tell you what I felt when I saw it. My name is Moses, adopted son of Pharaoh, desert fugitive, shepherd, liberator of slaves, lawgiver of an entire people. I have had many names throughout my life, but what matters is not the name. It is what I learned after 80 years of living in the most intense way a human being can live. But before I tell you what I saw in today's world, I need you to understand where I came from. Because the comparison only makes sense if you understand the starting point. Let me tell you who I was. I was born at a moment when the people I belonged to were being exterminated. Pharaoh had ordered that all newborn Hebrew boys be thrown into the Nile River. My mother placed me in a papyrus basket and put me in the river among the reeds to save me. Imagine what it takes to do that. Imagine putting your child in a river so he will not be killed. That was the world I entered. I was raised in Pharaoh's palace. I grew up surrounded by wealth, power, and privilege. I learned to read and write in an era when most people never would. I had access to education, resources, and the protection of one of the most powerful empires that had ever existed. And yet I saw what was happening around me. I saw Hebrew slaves carrying stone under the Egyptian sun. I saw overseers beating exhausted men who could no longer work. I saw families separated. I saw people treated not as human beings, but as tools, useful while they produced, discarded when they could no longer do so. And one day I saw an Egyptian overseer beating a Hebrew slave, and I killed the overseer. I am not telling you that with pride. I am telling you because it is important for you to understand that the impulse to do something when you see an injustice can cost you everything. I fled Egypt with nothing. I went to the desert of Midian and spent 40 years tending sheep. 40 years. Sometimes the path to the most important thing in your life passes through a place that seems to have nothing to do with it. If this content is making you think, subscribe to the channel right now and hit the bell. Every week a historical figure comes back to tell you what they only learned with time. Then came the burning bush, a bush that burned without being consumed. A voice, and a mission I did not want. Go to Pharaoh and bring my people out of Egypt. I protested. I said I was not a good speaker. I said no one would listen to me. I said there was someone better suited for this task. And the answer was simple. It does not matter what you think you cannot do. Go. That is important for what I need to tell you about today's world. Because one of the biggest problems I see in your generation is not lack of ability. It is the unwillingness to go, even while feeling unprepared. But I will get to that. The Egypt I knew was one of the most advanced civilizations the world had seen. They had architecture that impresses to this day. They had mathematics, medicine, astronomy. They had a complex writing system. They had trade routes that connected continents. They had an organized state with laws, hierarchies, bureaucracy. And at the center of all that greatness was a system that functioned because thousands of human beings were in chains. Now let me tell you what I saw when artificial intelligence showed me today's world. I saw buildings that touch the clouds. I saw machines that move on their own. I saw devices smaller than the palm of a hand that contain more knowledge than all the libraries of ancient Egypt combined. I saw food being produced at a scale I could not have imagined. I saw diseases being cured that in my time wiped out entire civilizations. I saw a world of technical greatness that has no comparison to anything I knew. And then I looked deeper. And I saw something else. I saw that 700 million people still go to sleep hungry every day. I saw wars being fought over resources while technology exists to distribute them better. I saw children working in mines to extract minerals for the devices that wealthy countries use. I saw people being kept in systems of debt that function like invisible chains. I saw entire nations being drained of wealth while their people live in poverty. And my reaction was this. Pharaoh changed his name, but the structure is the same. Let me explain what I mean by that. In Egypt, slavery was visible. You could see the chains. You could see the guards. You knew who was the slave and who was the master because the difference was physical, direct, impossible to ignore. Today the chains are invisible, but they are equally real. When a worker spends their entire life working and never manages to get beyond where they started, that is a chain. When a poor country pays more in debt interest than it invests in health and education, that is a chain. When a person spends 12 hours a day doing work they did not choose, for a wage that barely covers rent, for a company that profits billions, that is a chain. I am not saying it is the same as literal slavery. I am saying the logic is the same. There is a system that benefits from keeping people trapped where they are. And that system is skilled enough to convince people that their prison is natural, that it is deserved, that it is the only thing possible. Pharaoh said that too. He said the Hebrews needed strong leadership, that without supervision they would be incapable, that this was the natural order of things. I have heard that before. Now let me tell you what I would have done in today's world, because that is what I was asked to say. The first thing I would say is this: liberation begins on the inside. Do you know what the hardest problem I faced in the Exodus was? It was not Pharaoh. It was not the Egyptian army that chased us to the Red Sea. The hardest problem was the people I was liberating. Because after we crossed the sea, after Pharaoh's army sank in the waters, after we were free, the people began to complain. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They said they preferred slavery to the uncertainty of the desert. They said that at least in Egypt they had guaranteed food, even if it was a slave's food. That shocked me more than any physical obstacle. And I understood, over those 40 years in the desert, that the greatest work was not crossing a sea. It was dismantling inside each person the mentality of someone who had spent their entire life being told they were worth nothing, that they were incapable, that they needed an owner to survive. Slavery is not only what they do to your body, it is what they do to your mind. And when I look at today's world, I see this everywhere. I see people who have been conditioned to believe they deserve no more, that questioning the system is ingratitude, that accepting what you were given is humility when it is actually surrender. If I were here today, the first thing I would do is work on people's minds before working on the system. Because you cannot build a free world with people who still carry the mentality of the prison. Subscribe to the channel. Every week a figure who changed history comes back to tell you what you never learned in school. The second thing I would do differently, I would use the available tools without getting lost in them. In my time, the resources I had were limited: a staff, a voice, a presence. The 10 plagues were not my doing. They were what happens when a power greater than any pharaoh decides the time has come. But today I look at the tools that exist and I am speechless. You have the ability to communicate a message to billions of people at the same time. Anyone with a device and a connection can do that. The power that pharaohs used to control what people knew, the monopoly on information, has been broken. And what do most people do with that? They spend hours watching videos of funny dogs. I am not judging. I am pointing out the contrast. You have in your hands the greatest instrument of liberation that has ever existed, the ability to access any knowledge, to connect with any person, to organize any movement. And the biggest challenge is no longer access. It is attention. Because the new pharaoh does not need physical chains when he can completely occupy your mind with entertainment. When you are always distracted, you never think about the questions that really matter. And when you do not think about those questions, you do not act. And when you do not act, the system continues. If I were here today, I would use every available tool. but I would never let the tool become the goal. The third thing, I would not be afraid of being unpopular. When I came down from Mount Sinai with the tablets of the law and found the people worshiping a golden calf, I broke the tablets on the ground. In anger, in disappointment, in a grief that goes beyond words. The people had promised. They had said, "We will do everything the Lord commands." And 40 days later they were celebrating, worshiping a metal statue they had made themselves. Why? Because waiting is hard. Because uncertainty is uncomfortable. Because when you cannot see what is coming, the human tendency is to create something concrete, immediate, visible to hold on to. Today, the golden calf has other names. It has the name of anything that offers immediate certainty in exchange for you stopping asking the hard questions. It has the name of any leader who promises to fix everything if you simply obey without questioning. It has the name of any system that tells you to trust and not look back. When I broke those tablets, the people were angry with me. When I told them they would have to spend 40 years in the desert because of the choices they had made, the people were angry with me. When I told truths no one wanted to hear, I was always unpopular. And I did it anyway. Because popularity is a trap. A leader who only says what people want to hear is not a leader. They are a mirror, and mirrors do not take anyone anywhere. The fourth thing, I would care about those left behind. In the desert, the greatest lesson I learned was not about miracles. It was about how to treat the most vulnerable people within a community. The laws I received at Sinai were not only about rituals and worship. They were about how to organize a society so that no one was left behind. There were specific laws about treating the foreigner well, because you were foreigners in Egypt. There were laws about leaving part of the harvest in the field for the poor to collect. There were laws about the year of Jubilee, in which debts were forgiven and lands returned to the families that had lost them. This was a vision of a society where accumulation had a limit, where no one could become so poor that they lost everything forever, where the system was periodically reset so that inequality would not become permanent. Now compare that to what I saw in today's world. I saw the 8 wealthiest men in the world together owning more than the poorest half of humanity. I saw healthcare systems where the quality of treatment depends directly on how much you can pay. I saw housing becoming more expensive while wages remain stagnant. I saw the concept of jubilee, of reset, of debt forgiveness, of redistribution, being treated as a radical and impractical idea. If I were here today, I would say that a society that does not care for its most vulnerable is not advanced. No matter the technology it has, no matter the buildings it constructed, no matter the GDP, a society is only as developed as it treats those at the bottom of it. The fifth thing I would do, I would choose the difficult truth over the comfortable lie. Before I died, I climbed Mount Nebo. From there I could see the Promised Land, the place I had been leading the people toward for 40 years, the place that had been the goal of an entire generation of walking. I did not enter. Because of a single moment of impatience in the desert, I had disobeyed a specific instruction, and the consequence was that I would see the land, but not set foot in it. I could have hidden that. I could have told a different version. I could have invented a nobler reason for staying behind. But the text tells exactly what happened. Because honesty about your own failures is part of leadership. When I look at today's world, I see a culture that is terrified of admitting mistakes. I see leaders who prefer to lie rather than apologize. I see entire systems built on the refusal to acknowledge what went wrong. I see people who spend more energy justifying their own failures than learning from them. The truth about where I failed is on record. My name became linked to a disobedience that cost dearly. And yet my legacy did not end with that. Because an admitted mistake does not destroy a life. A denied, repeated, hidden mistake, that has the power to do so. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel and share this video. There are people who need to hear this and have not found this channel yet. Let me arrive at my final reaction. At what I truly felt when I saw today's world. It was not surprise at the technology, not admiration for the buildings or the devices or the medicine. All of that is impressive, but it is not what moved me. What moved me was realizing that in 3,000 years, human beings have changed everything, except what really needed to change. They changed the speed of travel, but not the ease with which they destroy each other when there is an advantage in it. They changed the size of armies, but not how readily the powerful send the poor to die in wars the wealthy started. They changed the capacity to communicate, but not the tendency to use that communication to manipulate, to divide, to create versions of reality that serve whoever holds power. They changed the form of slavery, but they did not eliminate slavery. And my only reaction when I saw all of this was a reaction I had before, in the desert, before a people who had just been liberated and were already missing their chains. Indignation. Not the cold indignation of the distant observer, the burning indignation of someone who believes people deserve more than what they have been given. Of someone who knows that conformism is not peace, it is surrender. Of someone who understands that accepting an unjust situation as natural is not wisdom, it is complicity. I was a man full of flaws. I made enormous mistakes. I doubted when I should have trusted. I acted with violence when I should have waited. I was impatient when patience was what the situation required. But one thing I never did. I never pretended that injustice was normal. And if I were here today, with everything I saw, with everything I learned, with the perspective of 3,000 years of distance, that would be the only message I would leave you. Do not pretend that injustice is normal. Do not confuse conformity with peace. Do not confuse silence with wisdom. Do not confuse accepting what you were given with being grateful for what you have. Gratitude for your life does not require you to accept what is wrong. You can be grateful for your life and at the same time be intolerant of unnecessary suffering around you. The two coexist. In fact, the two need to coexist. Because whoever has never suffered from injustice has more obligation, not less, to care about those who do. Today's Pharaoh may have a different name. He may wear a suit instead of a crown. He may operate through algorithms instead of armed guards. He may keep people trapped with debt instead of chains. But liberation works the same way it always has. It starts when one person, just one, stops in the middle of the road and says, "This is not right," and does not run. My name is Moses, and what you do with that is the most important decision you will make today.